Welcome to this week's Together Thursday webinar series. The webinar is an alumni relations initiative to help keep Trinity alumni connected during this time of social distancing. I'm David Girault, Trinity class of 1991 and the fourth Entrepreneur-in-Residence at Trinity Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I'll be your host today. Our conversation today is about the Payroll Protection Program that was part of the CARES Act. Joining us is Amanda Weinand, Senior Vice President and SBA Lending Specialist at Broadway Bank. So Amanda, let's start out by quickly framing out what the PPP program is all about. I've seen it described as a program almost as large as the entire Department of Defense budget that was conceived of, structured, and rolled out in a period of less than 90 days in a massive public-private partnership with the Department of Treasury and the SBA, the Federal Reserve, and literally thousands of national, regional, and community banks. It was far from perfect, but tell us, how did it get the job done?
Thank you, David, and thank you all for having me on today. You're absolutely right, David. The rollout was definitely far from perfect, but for the most part, I'd say it was vastly successful. The PPP continues to be compared to building a plane while it's in the air. The goal was to push billions of dollars into the economy in a very expeditious fashion to help with the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. There have been over 20 modifications or interim final rules to the program, 4 different versions of the borrower and lender applications. Despite the continuing changes, the program has had significant impact. At a national level, there were close to 5 million PPP loans originated for over $517 billion of funding and supporting more than 51 million jobs. Banks, credit unions, fintechs, and non-traditional lenders alike came together to get those funds out to our communities as quickly as possible. To give it some local perspective, Broadway Bank typically does about 20 to 30 SBA loans in a normal year. For PPP, we facilitated over 2,500 loans in just 3 short months, all while facing our own COVID challenges. It was a monumental effort that more than 75% of our staff assisted with, working around the clock for the first several weeks, mostly remote, to push $400 million back into the economy and to help thousands of folks in our communities.
Wow, that's amazing. So what's the status of the program now? I understand there's still money available and Congress has extended the window to apply.
Yeah, so round 2 of the PPP program actually expired June 30th, but funds were still left in the program. So Congress approved a 3rd round that will expire August 8th. That enables businesses and independent contractors to take advantage of the program if they haven't already. There is still well over $100 billion in funds left in the program. So I definitely suggest reaching out to your existing financial institution if the PPP is something that interests you. All businesses, including nonprofits, veterans organizations, tribal business concerns, sole proprietorships, self-employed individuals, and independent contractors, businesses with 500 employees or less can apply. If you're in the restaurant or hospitality industries, your size standard qualifier is based on employee count per location. So the funds are mostly intended to help with payroll costs, including salaries, wages, commissions, tips, and even employee benefits. But they can also be used for mortgage interest, rent, and utilities as long as those debts or utilities were in place before February 15th of this year. Then the PPP Flexibility Act became effective June 5th and allowed for many flexibilities of the program, including the required allocation of funds towards payroll costs to be reduced from 75 to 60%. Meaning up to 40% of the PPP funds could actually be used on eligible non-payroll expenses. And this was really important because as a lot of businesses were actually closed, their payroll may or may not have been up to what it normally would be. The PPP Flexibility Act also extended the covered period or the time you had to spend the PPP funds from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So once again, it allowed those businesses who actually were shut down or under limited operations a longer period of time to utilize their funds.
Fantastic. That's really helpful information for our alumni community that are perhaps entrepreneurs or business owners. Now, you also shared some stats earlier about the program. Do you have any examples of the program's impact right here in San Antonio?
Yeah, absolutely. And without going into too much detail, given customer confidentiality, we've had some great success stories that I can definitely recap for you. So by industry, restaurants have been one of the most obviously affected throughout the last few months. They've been faced with shutdown orders and modifying operations, having to either be fully closed or go just through drive-through or pickup only. So one of our locally based customers has 9 restaurant locations with between 30 and 40 employees each. Looking at impact, the PPP helped support a rough estimate of 300 jobs just for this one customer, which equates to supporting 300 plus families. So those employees, while they were not able to work, were still able to earn their wages and support their families. We were told that when the business owner told the employees they'd continue receiving their wages despite being closed, the employees were overjoyed with gratitude, some even expressing tears of joy, as their job was their lifeline. Another highly impacted industry continues to be the hospitality industry. We all know everybody loves to visit San Antonio in the summertime, and this particular hotel or customer usually is booming this time of year. However, he was on the verge of laying off over 200 employees, but because of the PPP loan, they were able to continue to pay their employees plus benefits. Another one I kind of really like to point out is nonprofits generally are not eligible for SBA funding, but the PPP allowed them to take advantage of the program. Keep in mind, most nonprofits, as we all know, have fundraising events to support their operational cost. Most run at bare bones to begin with. COVID has canceled many of those events, and those nonprofits had to get very creative to ensure they're still able to operate and provide the value to the community they always have. We have several large and small nonprofit customers that we were able to support through PPP loans, which have helped them immensely continue to operate. But let's not forget the mom and pops of all industries. Several are community staples, and while their employee counts may be much smaller, the impact is just as great. The thing about small business owners is they pour their hearts and souls into their businesses. Their businesses are their lives. I work in small business lending. I see it every single day. We've had several of those small business customers sit in our office or even visit with us over the phone, and were practically in tears because they didn't know what they would do. They had been shut down. They had limited operations. They wanted to keep their employees, but they couldn't. So the PPP loans really helped with having them have that knowledge of knowing the funds are there and they can spend it on keeping their employees and their business operating. So while I could go on and on about the success stories that I hear almost on a daily basis, COVID has greatly impacted and will continue to impact the vast majority of our community. We're certainly not alone in the PPP program, and I'd like to personally thank all of the institutions and folks that poured their hearts into getting these funds into our community. I'd also like to thank our customers for being amazingly understanding as the rules keep changing, and we'll continue to do our best interpreting the changes as they come, especially as we await forgiveness guidance.
So you mentioned forgiveness. That's actually the other topic I wanted to touch on with our group today. So one of the benefits of the PPP program is that these loans may be forgiven by the government if certain criteria are met. I know the goalposts have been moved a couple of times, but in a good way, I believe, for some of that. And I'm sure we can assume that there are more than a few Trinity alumni-owned businesses out there that might have received a PPP loan. Can you explain a little bit about how the forgiveness process works, or at least what we know as of today about how that works? What should folks be doing now, and when can they ask their bank about getting their loans forgiven?
Absolutely. So forgiveness is definitely the most popular question at this point. Right now, lenders and borrowers are awaiting the guidance on what the required process will look like for forgiveness submissions. SBA has indicated that they're developing a new platform to be able to process the forgiveness applications, which we assume, or we're told, will be available early to mid-August. We've been informing our borrowers to hang on to their supporting documentation for how they spent the funds. So your payroll reports, your check stubs, your utility bills, all of the stuff to validate how you spent your funds, hang on to that for now. You can look at the forgiveness applications that are posted on the U.S. Treasury website and the SBA website. One's an 11-page application. The other is a 3-page application. The difference being there's some criteria listed in the 3-page application. Most businesses will qualify to use that one. But you can look at those forms and kind of work through it and understand what SBA will look at as far as what's eligible, what's not eligible, how to do your FTE calculation or your full-time equivalent calculation. But the key here really is please be patient, not just for yourself, but also for the bank. We're in the same position as you are. We're waiting on that guidance, but we promise we will relay that information as quickly as we can to you. This is something, it's industry-wide. It's not just one bank over another. So just be patient is the best piece of advice I can give. There's also a new proposed bill that's working its way through the government that will allow for expedited and possibly automatic forgiveness for PPP loans under a certain loan amount threshold. We'll know soon if that bill will be amended and or passed, and we'll hopefully have additional guidance how that can be provided to our borrowers.
So basically, the answer is stay tuned.
Yes.
Maybe we can talk to Alumni Relations about doing another webinar when we have more answers for that. But thanks so much. Is there anything else I didn't cover that we should mention about the PPP program?
Not necessarily about the PPP program, but I do want to also inform the viewers that if you're not able to get a PPP, or if you've gotten one and it's just not enough, SBA does still have the EIDL, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, open. The EIDL Advance is not open. The funds have been exhausted, but the EIDL loan still is. It's a very reasonably priced loan for long term. So if you haven't received the PPP, or like I said, it's just not enough, seek out information about the EIDL loan, and it's available on sba.gov/disaster.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's directly from the SBA, right? It doesn't involve a community bank?
Exactly. It's direct through the SBA.
Okay. And then also, this could be a whole other topic, but there's also for larger small businesses, the Main Street program that's out there as well.
Yes, and just like any government program, the Main Street program is also continuously changing. Most banks actually are not taking part in it because the way that we formulated examples, it's really not of benefit to the borrower just yet. You have to fit a very small criteria. So until that criteria is expanded, there may not be value for you. But definitely look into it and seek out your lender, see if they're participating in it, and see if there's anything they can do for you.
Great. Yet another topic for another Together Thursday. Well, thanks so much, Amanda, for joining us, and thank you to Broadway Bank for your ongoing support of Trinity University. This update, I hope, has been helpful for our alumni and the greater Trinity community in terms of what's going on right now with the PPP program. And we look forward maybe to having you back, and certainly to Broadway Bank's support for many years to come for the Trinity programs.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody.